Just a few things about the major quiz. The common errors. Almost everybody made errors with the first problem. Okay, you're given a red dot and 4x4 rectangle. People didn't have a 4x4 rectangle. You know, X is negative 30 here, X is plus 30 over here. That's a 4x60 rectangle, or whatever the height was. Okay, 4x4 rectangle. You should be able to do that. And the advantage of a 4x4 rectangle is that your G of X is not going to have a vertical stretch in it. Okay? At least not for these three functions, exponential, quadratic, reciprocal function, because we're going to get one of those. So now the good thing about what I saw was most people did a good job of the construction lines. Okay? And I was pleased with that. Okay? Most people overlooked the idea that you label the construction lines with y equals and y equals and label them all and x equals and x equals to reinforce what a vertical line and a horizontal line are, because that's a common cause of confusion. Okay. So there's reason for all the specifics that I've asked you to include in your work. Okay. And what I'm trying to convince you to do is get the tightest focus on the details and the specifics that we're missing to some extent on almost every test. Okay. There was one. Yes, one instance where somebody made 100, another where somebody made a 90, and that was all pretty good. Okay. Then there were some scores in the mid to high 70s, which weren't bad, but could have been much higher with more attention to detail. Okay, so, and all the other things I ask you to do in this, ask you to label your construction points. What's it mean to label your construction points? That means the X's you make when you go start up here, go one right and two down and all that stuff. Follow the algorithm, and not everybody followed the algorithm. You got to know the algorithm is. Okay. But most people did. Most people did a good job of that. But make a table of these points, and that's what the table would be for the quadratic function if the red dot was a 12, negative 14. Okay. And it was a 4x4 rectangle. Then give the formula function. It's generally a f of x minus h plus k, but it's a 4x4 rectangle. I didn't include a in there because a would be 1. So it's just identifying h and k. H and k are 12, negative 14. Because the red dot is where the origin goes. Then g of x would be f of x minus 12 plus negative 14. F of x is x squared. So if you understand the function notation, you get formula for g of x, x minus 12 squared minus 14. And then you make a table using this, calculating this. Okay. And then also you make some estimates and do other things with it, depending on which type of problem you got. Okay. Another thing, inverse functions, you swap x and y. It means if you have your table for your function, your table for your inverse function will have the same numbers, but in opposite columns. And then you can graph it, and you can graph your inverse function. Now, there are questions I then ask about these functions, and I'm not going to go over those right now. Just in a bit of time, that could probably essentially. But one version of the problem you get here, you're given values. Then you're asked to construct a graph of the function and its inverse, and then answer some questions. Okay. Here, sometimes you're given a function. the equation of a function and ask if find the. Well, the thing about inverse, you swap X and Y. Whether you have this or this, you swap X and Y. What do you do if you give an f of X equals 5X minus 7? That's Y equals 5X minus 7. So Y equals 5X minus 7. Now you swap X and Y to get X equals 5 minus 7. You solve for Y, and now you have the formula for the inverse function. Okay. Now, sometimes it's really tough to solve it. The ones I put on the major quiz were fairly easy to solve. Okay. Then a warning, f inverse of X is not 1 over f of X. This, I see why you would think that if you think that this is an algebra, if f is some algebraic expression, but it's not. It's the name of a function. And putting a -1 on the name of a function means you take the inverse function is swap X and Y. Okay? So don't make that mistake. That was a very frequent mistake. People say 1 over 5X minus 7. But there's some thought behind that. At least you know what a negative exponent means, right? You're just applying the idea of a negative exponent in a situation where it doesn't apply. Okay. Finding the average rate of change between 2 points, you can use a definition, changing this divided by changing that. But in some cases, I say, I want to see a labeled fundamental triangle. And anytime you do it, you actually should do a labeled fundamental triangle, keep reinforcing it. Okay. It doesn't take long. But I didn't see a whole lot of properly labeled fundamental triangles. I saw some triangles with some numbers on them, but I didn't see the information. Right here is the whole story of your fundamental triangle. Everything is here. Run is 6 minus 3 equals 3. And you go from X equals 3 to 6. Y goes from 5 to 12. So rise is 12 minus 5 equals 7. You probably want to put arrows in these things to make sure that both of them are going in the same direction. And then you say slope is rise over run. That's 7 over 5. And you put a 7 over 5 in a box here so you don't have to read anything. You just know where the slope is. You can see it all. Boom, right there it is in your face. You can't miss it. Have every detail in that picture. Okay? That's a focused solution. Okay? Now, you have other courses, you have other demands in your time, might even have a life out there. Okay, I understand. You can't be absolutely focused on everything, but that's a really thing to be absolutely focused on. It's a really easy thing to be absolutely focused on. Okay, you just have to do it. Make sense? And most of you have. I'm not being critical of you. I'm trying to tell you this is what it takes to be prepared to do well on a test. That makes sense. Just focus on some of these details in practice. Okay. I doubt if many of you actually worked through a lot of the problems I sent out. It really covered everything that could be on the test. Now, I understand, you're working 80 hours a week, you got 16 kids to take care of. And if, you got to spend 12 hours a day in social media. How are you going to ever prepare for a test? Well, nobody's in that situation. And if you are and you're still alive, you have my respect. So it's, life can be tough and it can be tough to get things done. I totally understand it. So I don't make any value judgments on you as a human being based on what you do in this course. Okay. However, I've got to tell you, this is what it takes. All right. And you're going to, most of you, and I'm going to offer kind of an amnesty. If you can do better on the midterm than you did on the major quiz, I'll change the grade in the major quiz to match your grade on the midterm. Okay. So even if you made 6% on the test, everybody after that. But even if you made 6% on the test, you haven't dug yourself into a terribly deep hole. Okay. Now the midterm, that's you get what you get. Okay. Okay. Well, there are more things I could say. Let me just take a look at this. We'll just look at everything she did. No, and I'm just looking at the problems, not at what Alexa did on the problems. Find the inverse function. Oh yeah, piecewise functions. Terrible at piecewise functions. You need to review that. You simply need to review that. It's there in the open math. I've said it so many times that I'd probably say it again, but there are other things I probably need to be saying. I've done one of these. I've done a couple of them. The same way that they're stated here. Oh yeah, composite function. I want to talk about that. A couple of the applied problems people tend to do fairly well on, but again, I didn't see the tight focus that would get you full score. See people get like half. Half's a good start. Okay, but you want to push it beyond that, right? Okay, so let's say I want to talk about composite functions and yeah, that's about it. That's all I'm talking about. I'll talk more about things later. So if I have y equals this, express it to x. And meaning, tell me what f of x is, tell me what g of x is. Well, g of x is a thing you see a couple of times here. It's going to be 7x minus 3. Right? If you see the same expression several times in a composite function, it means that's probably your g of x function, because that's the first thing you do to x. Okay? And then what's f of x? Well, what happens to g of x? Take the square root of it, then you take the reciprocal square of it, right? So f of x is just square root of x minus 1 over x squared. Right there. Is it? So you might want to look more at composite functions. Take calculus course, that's going to be really good. Okay. And also the whole thing about function notation.